The crimson horizon bled across the Montana sky as Katherine Flynn watched the dust of her past settle behind the stagecoach that had brought her to Timber Creek. She clutched a worn leather satchel, her only possession besides the shame that hung around her shoulders heavier than any shawl. It was 1879, and the promise of a new beginning stretched before her like the vast prairie, beautiful, terrifying, and utterly unknown. Katherine's fingers trembled as she smoothed down her faded blue dress, the nicest one she owned, though the hem was frayed and a small tear had been carefully mended near the sleeve. The small frontier town bustled with afternoon activity, men in dusty boots striding purposefully down wooden sidewalks, while women balanced baskets of goods from the general store. No one here knew her story. No one knew what she had done to survive after her family had perished in the Chicago fire of '71. "Miss, you planning to stand there till sundown?" The stagecoach driver had already unloaded her single trunk and was eyeing her expectantly. "No, sir. Thank you." Katherine fumbled in her coin purse and handed over the last of her money as a tip. The man tipped his hat and climbed back onto his perch, leaving Katherine alone on the dusty street. The boarding house loomed at the end of the road, a two-story wooden structure with a sign that read, "Mrs. Abernathy's Lodgings for Respectable Ladies." Katherine swallowed hard. Respectable. The word mocked her. She had secured a position as a schoolteacher through correspondence, carefully omitting the years she'd spent working in a Chicago saloon, serving drinks to men who thought a woman alone was fair game for wandering hands and indecent proposals. Some nights, she had allowed those proposals to become realities. It was that or starve. "Need some help with that trunk, madam?" The deep voice startled Katherine from her thoughts. She turned to find herself looking up at a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. His hat was pushed back on his head, revealing sandy brown hair and a face that had clearly spent years exposed to the elements. "I wouldn't want to trouble you," she said, instinctively backing away a step. The man's smile was easy, genuine in a way that made Katherine's chest ache with memory. It had been so long since anyone had looked at her without wanting something in return. "No trouble at all. Name's Gabriel Irwin. Most folks around here call me Gabe." He extended a calloused hand. Katherine hesitated before placing her gloved fingers in his. "Katherine Flynn. I'm the new schoolteacher." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Well now, that's fine news. Town's been without proper schooling since Miss Winters left to get married last spring." He lifted her trunk with ease, balancing it on one broad shoulder. "Mrs. Abernathy's, I presume?" Katherine nodded, falling into step beside him. His long strides were measured to accommodate her shorter ones, a consideration that did not go unnoticed. "First time in Montana territory?" he asked, guiding her around a muddy patch in the road. "Yes, I'm from Chicago originally. Long way from home." Katherine's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Sometimes home is where you make it." Gabe studied her for a moment, as if sensing the weight behind her words, but didn't press further. "Well, Miss Flynn, Timber Creek might not have the sophistication of Chicago, but it's a good place with good people." As they approached the boarding house, a woman with iron gray hair pulled into a severe bun appeared on the porch, hands on her hips. "You must be Miss Flynn," she called out. "I'm Mrs. Abernathy. I see you've met our Gabriel. Town wouldn't function without him, I swear it." Gabriel touched the brim of his hat. "Just helping our new schoolteacher get settled, Mrs. A." The older woman's sharp eyes took in Katherine's travel-worn appearance. "Well, come in then. You must be exhausted. Dinner's at 6 sharp, no exceptions." Gabriel carried Katherine's trunk upstairs to a small but clean room at the end of the hallway. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains, illuminating a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small writing desk. "It's perfect," Katherine said, though in truth she'd slept in far worse places and far better ones. "School term starts in 2 weeks," Gabriel said, setting her trunk down. "Gives you time to get acquainted with the town and your students. Are you on the school board, Mr. Irwin?" He laughed, a rich sound that filled the small space. "No, madam. I run the Double Creek Ranch about 5 miles out of town. But in a place this size, everybody knows everybody's business." Before she could respond, Mrs. Abernathy appeared in the doorway. "That'll be all, Gabriel. Miss Flynn needs her rest, and I won't have folks talking about a man lingering in a lady's quarters." Katherine felt her cheeks flush, both at the implication and the irony of it. If only the good matron knew just how many men had lingered in her quarters back in Chicago. Gabriel tipped his hat once more. "Good day, Miss Flynn. Welcome to Timber Creek." After he left, Mrs. Abernathy helped Katherine unpack her meager belongings, clucking her tongue at the limited wardrobe. "We'll have to see about getting you some more suitable attire for teaching. Can't have you wearing the same 2 dresses all term." Katherine's heart sank. "I'm afraid my funds are rather limited until I receive my first payment." The older woman waved a dismissive hand. "Millicent at the dress shop owes me a favor. We'll work something out." She paused, her expression softening. "Everyone deserves a fresh start, Miss Flynn." For a moment, Katherine wondered if this stern woman somehow knew her secrets, but Mrs. Abernathy's face revealed nothing but practical kindness. "Thank you," Katherine whispered, relief washing over her. That night, after a simple but satisfying dinner with the boarding house's other residents, 2 elderly sisters and a young widow, Katherine sat at her window, gazing out at the unfamiliar stars. The town had grown quiet. Only the occasional whinny of horses or burst of laughter from the saloon down the street breaking the silence. She opened her journal, the pages filled with 5 years of regrets and hopes, and began to write. Timber Creek, Montana Territory. Perhaps here, at last, I can become someone worthy of respect, someone I can bear to see in the mirror each morning. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Katherine threw herself into readying the schoolhouse, a single-room building at the edge of town that had gathered dust in Miss Winter's absence. She scrubbed floors, washed windows, and organized the limited supply of books and slates. Gabriel Irwin appeared occasionally, always with some offering fresh apples from his orchard, a sturdy bookshelf he'd built for the school, or simply an extra pair of hands to move heavy desks. Katherine found herself looking forward to his visits, even as she reminded herself that men like Gabriel, honest, decent men, weren't for women with pasts like hers. "The children are excited to meet you," he told her one afternoon as they arranged desks in neat rows. "Been running wild as colts all summer." "How many students should I expect?" Katherine asked, wiping perspiration from her brow. 22, ranging from 6 to 16, he replied. "Mostly ranchers' children and town kids. The Wilson twins are the oldest, bright as new pennies, but mischievous." Katherine smiled. "I look forward to the challenge." "You know," he said, pausing in his work, "you don't seem like any schoolteacher I've ever met." Her heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" Gabriel shrugged, his eyes warm as they met hers. "Most come out here all starch and rules. You've got softness to you, and strength too. It's a good combination for handling young ones." Relief flooded her. "Thank you. I just want to do right by them." "You will," he said with such certainty that Katherine almost believed it herself. The day before school was to begin, the town held a small gathering to welcome Katherine officially. It seemed everyone in Timber Creek had crowded into the church hall, eager to meet the new teacher. Mayor Thompson, a portly man with an impressive mustache, made a short speech about the importance of education. Sheriff Miller reminded the assembled children that misbehavior at school would be reported to him personally, eliciting nervous giggles from the younger ones. Throughout the evening, Katherine was introduced to so many people that their names and faces began to blur together. She smiled until her cheeks ached, shook hands until her arm felt numb, and answered the same questions about Chicago dozens of times. "You holding up all right?" Gabriel's voice was a welcome respite as he appeared at her side with a cup of punch. "Barely," she admitted, accepting the drink gratefully. "I hadn't realized I'd be such a curiosity." "New faces are rare here, especially pretty ones," he said, then flushed slightly. "I mean, it's fine," Katherine said quickly, though warmth spread through her at the compliment. As the evening wound down, Katherine found herself cornered by Harriet Peterson, the banker's wife and, as Mrs. Abernathy had warned her, the town's most notorious gossip. "So, Miss Flynn," Mrs. Peterson said, her eyes gleaming with interest, "what brings a refined city lady like yourself to our humble town? Running from something? Or someone?" Katherine felt the blood drain from her face. Before she could formulate a response, Gabriel was there, his presence solid and reassuring at her side. "Mrs. Peterson, I believe your husband is looking for you." "Something about heading home before it gets too late." The woman huffed but took the hint, casting one last curious glance at Katherine before bustling away. "Thank you," Katherine murmured. Gabriel nodded, studying her pale face. "Some folks can't help prying. Don't let it trouble you." But it did trouble her. That night, Katherine barely slept, plagued by dreams of her past catching up to her. In one nightmare, she stood before her class while parents pointed and whispered, "Saloon girl, fallen woman." She woke gasping, sheets twisted around her trembling body. The first day of school dawned bright and clear. Katherine dressed carefully in her new navy blue dress, a gift from Mrs. Abernathy and Millicent. With her hair pinned neatly and a small cameo at her throat, her mother's, the only thing she'd saved from before the fire, she looked every inch the respectable schoolteacher. The children filed in shyly, clutching slates and lunch pails. Katherine greeted each one by name, having memorized them from the town registry. By mid-morning, the initial awkwardness had given way to eager participation as Katherine led them through reading exercises and simple arithmetic. At noon, as the children scattered outside to eat their lunches in the schoolyard, Katherine sat at her desk, allowing herself a moment of pride. Perhaps she could do this. Perhaps she could be the person these children deserved. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Gabriel stood there, holding a small basket. "Thought you might not have had time for breakfast," he said, setting the basket on her desk. Inside was a cloth-wrapped bundle of still-warm biscuits, a jar of honey, and a ripe peach. "That's very thoughtful," Katherine said, genuinely touched. "Won't you join me?" They shared the simple meal as Katherine told him about her morning. Gabriel listened attentively, his gray eyes crinkling at the corners when she described 6-year-old Annie Miller's solemn explanation that her cat had eaten her slate pencil. "You're a natural with them," he said. "They already adore you." Katherine shook her head. "They hardly know me." "Children have good instincts about people," Gabriel insisted. "Better than most adults." Before Katherine could respond, the school bell rang, signaling the end of the lunch hour. Gabriel stood, brushing crumbs from his trousers. "I should let you get back to your charges," he said. "I'm heading into the mountains tomorrow with a couple of hands to round up strays. Won't be back for about a week." "Oh." Katherine was surprised by the pang of disappointment she felt. "Well, safe travels, Mr. Irwin." "Gabe," he corrected gently. "Friends call me Gabe." The word friends lingered between them, weighted with possibility. "Safe travels, Gabe," she amended, and was rewarded with a smile that stayed with her long after he'd gone. The days fell into a pleasant rhythm. Mornings and afternoons were filled with lessons, evenings with grading papers, and preparing for the next day. Katherine found herself flourishing in her role, the genuine affection of her students healing something broken inside her. True to his word, Gabriel was gone for a week. Katherine refused to acknowledge how often she found herself glancing toward the door, hoping to see his tall figure. It was foolish to entertain such thoughts. Men like Gabriel married innocent girls, not women with secrets dark enough to fill the Montana night. When he finally returned, it was with a bloody gash across his forehead and 2 broken ribs. The news spread quickly through town: a surprise rock slide, a spooked horse, Gabriel thrown against jagged stone. Katherine heard it from Mrs. Abernathy over breakfast, and the food turned to ash in her mouth. Will he be all right?" she asked, struggling to keep her voice level. "Doc Stevens says he'll mend, but he's confined to bed for at least a week. His sister's looking after him at the ranch." Mrs. Abernathy gave Katherine a shrewd look. "Perhaps you might visit this weekend. Bring him some of those books he's always borrowing from you. Man will go mad with boredom otherwise." Katherine hesitated. Visiting a man at his home, even an injured one, pushed the boundaries of propriety. But the thought of Gabriel lying there in pain. "I'll consider it," she said carefully. Saturday afternoon found Katherine in a borrowed buggy, making her way along the winding road to Double Creek Ranch. She had packed a basket with fresh bread, apple preserves, and 3 books she thought Gabriel might enjoy. It was a perfectly acceptable gesture from a concerned friend, she assured herself. The ranch was larger than she'd expected: a sprawling main house with a wide porch, several outbuildings, and corrals filled with fine-looking horses. A woman who shared Gabriel's storm-gray eyes met her at the door. "You must be the schoolteacher," she said, wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron. "I'm Martha, Gabe's sister. He's been insufferable, asking after you every day." Katherine felt her cheeks warm. I hope I'm not intruding. I brought some reading material to help pass the time. Martha's smile was knowing. You're a godsend. Come in. He's in the parlor, driving me to distraction with his complaints about being cooped up. Gabriel was propped up on a sofa, his forehead still bandaged and his torso wrapped in tight bindings. His face brightened visibly when Katherine entered the room, then immediately shifted to embarrassment. Miss Flynn, Katherine, you shouldn't have troubled yourself. It's no trouble, she said, setting the basket on a nearby table. How are you feeling? Like I lost an argument with a mountain, he grimaced, then patted the chair beside him. Please sit. Tell me what's happening in town. I'm starved for news that isn't about my sister's chickens. Katherine laughed, settling into the chair. For the next hour, she regaled him with stories from the schoolhouse and town gossip. Gabriel was an attentive listener, asking questions about particular students and laughing at her impressions of Mayor Thompson's grandiloquent speech at the town council meeting. When Martha brought tea, she insisted that Katherine stay for supper. It's nearly ready, and it's getting dark. You shouldn't drive back alone. I couldn't impose, Katherine began. Please stay, Gabriel said quietly. Unless you have other obligations. The naked hope in his eyes undid her. No other obligations. Supper was a lively affair, despite Gabriel's injuries. Martha was a gifted cook and an even better storyteller, sharing embarrassing tales from their childhood that had Gabriel groaning and Katherine laughing until tears streamed down her face. He really rode the milk cow into town? Katherine gasped. Wearing nothing but his birthday suit, Martha confirmed, ignoring her brother's protests. He was 5, and convinced that clothes slowed down his steed. As darkness fell, Martha insisted that Katherine stay the night. The guest room is made up, and I won't hear of you driving those roads in the dark. Gabe would worry himself into a fever. Katherine protested weakly, but in truth, she was reluctant to leave. There was something magical about the evening, the warm lamplight, the easy conversation, the way Gabriel looked at her when he thought she wouldn't notice. After Martha retired, Katherine helped Gabriel back to the sofa, where they sat talking in low voices about books, dreams, and the vast Montana sky. I never thought I'd end up here, Katherine admitted, gazing into the dying embers of the fire. Teaching children in a frontier town. Do you regret it? Gabriel asked, his eyes serious in the flickering light. No, she said truthfully. It feels right. Like I've found where I'm supposed to be. Something shifted in Gabriel's expression. Katherine, there's something I need to tell you. Her heart stuttered. Yes. I've never met anyone like you. Smart, kind, brave enough to start over in a strange place. He paused, seeming to gather courage. I care for you. More than I should, perhaps, given how short a time we've known each other. Katherine's throat tightened. The moment she had both longed for and dreaded had arrived. Gabe, you don't know everything about me. I know enough, he insisted. She shook her head, rising from her chair to pace before the fireplace. No, you don't. You see a respectable schoolteacher, but that's not all I am. That's not who I was. Then tell me, he said simply. The words came haltingly at first, then in a rush the fire that took her family, the desperate months that followed, the saloon where she'd found work serving drinks, and later, serving men. The shame of it burned her throat, but she forced herself to continue, to lay bare every sordid detail. When she finished, the silence stretched between them like a chasm. Katherine kept her eyes fixed on the floor, unable to bear the disgust she was certain she would see on Gabriel's face. Katherine, he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. Look at me. Slowly, she raised her eyes to his. Do you think I haven't made mistakes? That I haven't done things I regret? He struggled to sit up straighter, wincing at the pain in his ribs. You did what you had to do to survive. There's no shame in that. Men don't marry women with pasts like mine, she whispered. I'm not men, Gabriel countered. I'm just me. And I don't give a damn about what happened before. I care about who you are now, and who we might be together. He reached for her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she let him take it. You're worth more than gold to me, Katherine Flynn, he said softly. Your past doesn't change that. Nothing could. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You can't mean that. I've never meant anything more. He tugged gently on her hand, drawing her closer. Give me a chance to prove it to you. The next morning, Katherine returned to town with a lightness in her heart she hadn't felt in years. Nothing had been resolved. Not really. She still had her doubts, her fears that Gabriel would eventually realize his mistake and withdraw his affections. But for the first time, she allowed herself to hope. The following weeks were a revelation. Gabriel, despite his injuries, found reasons to be in town almost daily. He began courting her properly chaperoned walks, Sunday dinners at the boarding house, a picnic by the creek with Martha as their duenna. Timber Creek noticed, of course. The handsome rancher's interest in the new schoolteacher became the favorite topic of conversation. Most were supportive, but there were whispers too. Harriet Peterson, in particular, seemed determined to uncover Katherine's secrets. I heard she lived alone in Chicago for years. Katherine overheard the woman telling another lady outside the general store. No family, no husband. Seems peculiar, doesn't it? Katherine hurried past, her face burning. That night, she cried herself to sleep, certain that it was only a matter of time before someone discovered the truth. The next day, a letter arrived from Chicago. Katherine recognized the handwriting immediately. Lottie, one of the girls from the saloon. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal. "Dear Katie," it began. "I hope this finds you well in your new life. Things here are much the same. Mr. Sullivan still asks after you. Says the place isn't the same without your singing." The letter went on, filled with gossip about people Katherine had once known, ending with news that Lottie herself was planning to leave for San Francisco. It was signed with an elaborate flourish and Lottie's full name, Charlotte Mason, songbird of the Silver Dollar Saloon. Katherine stared at the envelope in horror. The return address was clearly printed in the corner. If anyone had seen this letter arrive. That afternoon, as she dismissed her students, Katherine found Gabriel waiting outside the schoolhouse. One look at her face told him something was wrong. "What is it?" he asked, once the last child had departed. Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. He read it quickly, his expression grave. "Has anyone else seen this?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Mrs. Abernathy usually sorts the mail, but she didn't mention anything." Gabriel folded the letter carefully and returned it to her. "We need to talk." They walked to the small church, which stood empty on weekday afternoons. Inside, the cool dimness offered privacy and a sense of sanctuary. "I've been thinking," Gabriel said, pacing before the simple altar. "This isn't working." Katherine's heart plummeted. "I understand," she said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "It's too much to ask, having to worry about my past coming to light." Gabriel stopped pacing and stared at her in confusion. "What? No, that's not what I meant." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I meant this, the sneaking around, the constant worry about what people might say or discover. It's not fair to you. I don't understand." He crossed to her in 2 long strides, taking her hands in his. "Marry me, Katherine. Be my wife." She blinked, certain she had misheard. "Gabe, did you not read the letter?" "If people find out, let them," he said fiercely. "You're not that person anymore, and even if traces of your past follow you, we'll face them together. As husband and wife." "You can't mean it. I've never been more serious." He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. "I love you, Katherine Flynn. I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." They were married 2 weeks later in that same church, with Martha as Katherine's bridesmaid and the entire town in attendance. There had been talk, of course, whispers about the hasty wedding, speculation about Katherine's past. But Gabriel had put a stop to the worst of it by confronting Harriet Peterson directly at a town gathering. "Miss Flynn, soon to be Mrs. Irwin, is the finest woman I've ever known," he had declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me." Coming from the most respected rancher in the county, it was enough to silence most wagging tongues. As Katherine walked down the aisle in a cream-colored dress Martha had helped her make, she saw only Gabriel waiting for her, his face alight with love and pride. In that moment, she finally believed that her past did not define her future. The reception was held at Double Creek Ranch, the yard transformed with paper lanterns and wildflowers. There was dancing and feasting late into the night, the children from Katherine's school presenting her with a handmade quilt as a wedding gift. "See," Gabriel murmured, his arms around her waist as they watched their guests laughing and dancing under the stars. "No one who matters cares about anything except who you are now." "And who am I?" she asked, turning in his embrace. You're Katherine Irwin, he said, bending to kiss her softly. My wife, this town's beloved teacher, and the strongest woman I know. Later that night, as they lay tangled in the sheets of what was now their shared bedroom, Katherine traced the scar on Gabriel's forehead, a permanent reminder of the accident that had brought them closer. What are you thinking? He asked, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. That I never thought I'd find this, she admitted. Happiness, acceptance, love. You deserve all of it and more, he said. You always did. In the years that followed, Katherine's fears gradually faded. She continued teaching until the birth of their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth after Katherine's mother. A son followed 2 years later, Gabriel Jr., with his father's stormy eyes and his mother's gentle spirit. The letter from Chicago remained their secret, tucked away in a box with other mementos of a life left behind. Occasionally, someone new to town would hear rumors about the schoolteacher turned rancher's wife with the mysterious past, but they never amounted to more than idle gossip. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Gabriel presented Katherine with a gold locket engraved with their initials. Remember what I told you the night I proposed? He asked as he fastened it around her neck. Katherine smiled, leaning into his embrace. That I was worth more than gold to you. I was wrong, he said, surprising her. Before she could question him, he continued, You're worth more than anything in this world, Katherine Irwin. Gold, silver, the whole damn ranch, none of it compares to you. Standing on the porch of the home they had built together, watching their children chase fireflies in the twilight, Katherine knew at last that she was worthy of love, of respect, of the life she had once only dreamed possible. The ghosts of her past no longer haunted her. They had been laid to rest in the arms of a man who saw beyond them to the woman she truly was. Worth more than gold, indeed.